Sunday Baroque Conversations is made possible by the Friends of Sunday Baroque and is produced at WSHU Public Radio in Fairfield, Connecticut. I'm Suzanne Bona. Thank you for listening. Don't miss an episode of Sunday Baroque Conversations. Subscribe on Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. And please leave us a review. If you want to find out where you can listen to our weekly show, visit our website, sundaybaroque.org, for a station list and our 24/7 stream. Again, that's sundaybaroque.org.
Would scansion cease to mark the beats if I went away? Would a syllable interrupt the feet of tetrametric iambs when I am gone? Listen.
Caroline Shaw is a multifaceted musician who explores genres and sounds as a composer, singer, and violinist. Her creative outlets include singing with the vocal band Roomful of Teeth and composing for TV, film, and stage projects such as the Ken Burns PBS documentary Leonardo Da Vinci and the FX Hulu show Fleishman is in Trouble. She's earned 5 Grammy Awards, and in 2013, when she was 30 years old, she became the youngest recipient of the Pulitzer Prize for music for her composition, Partita for 8 Voices. I am really excited to speak with Caroline Shaw on Zoom about her life in music. Hello.
Hi, Suzanne. Thank you for having me.
So first of all, you only recently, in February 2025, won that 5th Grammy. It was for Best Chamber Music Small Ensemble Performance for your piece, Rectangles and Circumstance. So congratulations. What's that like to win a Grammy Award?
Well, the first one, which was back in 2014, I was actually there at the ceremony and with everybody in Roomful of Teeth, and it was really exciting. This most recent one, I think I was in the grocery store at the time. So, you find out that you win a Grammy in lots of different places. But I feel very honored to be recognized by colleagues, and it's a great thing to share with So Percussion, which is we made the album together.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. So you were born and grew up in Greenville, North Carolina, and you started on violin as a 2-year-old Suzuki kid. So what, if anything, do you remember from your first encounters with music?
It was so long ago. My mom is a wonderful early childhood Suzuki teacher. So she taught me and my older brothers and my younger sister. And I just remember her constantly singing with us and playing the music in the car and at home. And we also listened to a lot of classical radio growing up. And, always the question of which composer do you think this is?
Yeah, I saw that your mom is also a violinist and singer, so you've followed in her footsteps. Did any of your siblings do the same?
We all played violin, but I'm the only one still doing it professionally. Yeah. They are a doctor and a lawyer and a teacher.
Wow. And then besides those Suzuki lessons, when Mom was sort of getting you into it, have you and your mom made music together?
A little bit. We used to sing in a choir in church together, and she actually recently in Greenville sang a piece of mine for choir called "And the Swallow." But I remember early days when I would play, she would sing these, the arias from Bach cantatas that have a violin part with them. We kind of loved. There's an Itzhak Perlman, I think, Kathleen Battle recording that we loved early on.
Oh, yeah. I know exactly which one. The Bach album, I think, is what it's called.
I think it's called the Bach album.
I love that. Yeah, I love it. So I'm glad that you mentioned that you were a public radio kid. Yay. But you were more than just the kid strapped in the back seat, having to listen because that's what your mom had on the radio. You were really actively engaged with your local public radio station. I understand that, you were calling to request music and setting up the recorder to and maybe calling if they didn't quite get it right. So what was that like? I mean, that's kind of a different thing for a little kid to be doing.
Oh yeah, it was a shout out to WTEB in New Bern, North Carolina, and they had request night on Thursdays. It was classical request night, and so it was back in the days when you couldn't just listen to anything online at any time. So I would call and request things I wanted to hear, and then I would get there ready with the tape deck and a cassette tape, and I would, press record as soon as it came on. It's just like back in the day when you made mixtapes. But then later, when I was in college, I was home for a summer, and I convinced them to let me do an internship. So I was even on the radio for a little bit. It was my dream, but you are living the dream, Suzanne.
Wow, that's very cool. I did not realize that. So, so many musicians, this is not going to be a surprise to you, but, a lot of musicians have a very sort of contained approach to their musical genres, for lack of a better way to describe it. You're either classical or you're pop or you're jazz, they're like these little silos. But you really seem to engage with music in a very different way. It's much broader, it's less siloed, it doesn't have those limitations or those labels. Did that just evolve in your musical mind, or did you consciously cast off those boundaries? How did you get to where you are as a musician?
I think it evolved kind of naturally. I definitely grew up only listening to classical music. But then as I got older, and friends introduced something that they're really into, and then when I started writing music, it was from a place of wanting to hear something that I hadn't heard before, but I really wanted to hear. So you have this question of how do I make that thing that I love? And also how do I sort of figure out how to love music in many different ways? So I'm just really interested in what music can do and how it works in all kinds of ways, whether it's in pop or classical or film or TV or in games or folk. So I'm very curious kind of how it is that I can love music and how I can learn a little bit more about it.
Mm. And I love that you come from this classical tradition. And I was thinking, as I was listening to so many different of your compositions, composers like Handel, like Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, and many, many others, of course, they wrote music for themselves to play. They debuted it. They were writing with their own skills in mind, not just their own imagination and their musical tastes. And you're kind of doing the same, too. I mean, a lot of the music that you are composing is music that you're writing to play on the violin, to sing, to, with the groups that you play with your collaborators. Was once again, is that just something that evolved organically? Is that something that you did intentionally? Was it just because, like you said, you were writing music that you wanted to hear because it hadn't been done? And is it kind of the same thing?
Yeah, I think it's, you start to want to make music for your friends or for certain occasions. And I found when I started writing music, I was listening more openly. And Bach is I admire him so much. He's someone who, he just loved music and he couldn't stop making it. They have, all these sort of violinist composers like Corelli and Vivaldi and Mozart and Beethoven eventually sort of tucked in as a violist in a quintet every so often, even though he's a pianist. But I think they were very much a part of the music making culture at the time, and learning from their peers constantly. Yeah.
So one of the things that you are also really known for is your collaborations, and those are also really varied across genres. There's Renee Fleming, there's Yo-Yo Ma, and then I gotta say it, Kanye West, to name just a few. So what great stories or interesting takeaways can you share about some of those collaborations? You choose which ones you want to talk about.
It's quite a range. I've gotten to work with a lot of different kinds of musicians, and I think, as I said before, I just want to learn how music works and how other people approach it and what moves them and what moves me. So Renee Fleming is an absolutely lovely person, incredibly curious and intelligent and just a beautiful singer and musician. Yo-Yo Ma is an absolute joy and, again, another curious person, beautiful musician. I mean, Kanye West is also the thing that I really liked working about. The thing I liked about working with him is that he is, again, a very curious mind. He comes from hip-hop but was interested in classical and interested in what I did. So he wanted to kind of bring other colors into his music. I've also recently gotten to work with Rosalia, who's a beautiful singer, amazing Spanish pop singer. Recently, Ken Burns on the documentary, so there's some film and TV too. But in general, I like working with someone who is interested in making music in a different way, not just what we did before, but how could we hear it differently.
So when you collaborate with someone like Rosalia or Kanye West or Yo-Yo Ma or Renee Fleming for that matter, how does that happen? Like what's the synergy like? Who starts? You know, do you come together and brainstorm? Do you come with some ideas and then flesh them out with them? How, what's the process?
Well, every single collaboration is a little bit different. And with Renee Fleming, we just talked about, I was going to write a couple of songs for a recital, and I asked her, what else are you interested in singing these days? And I know a bit about her as a musician and the repertoire that she's done in the past. So I kind of wrote towards her voice and towards some of her sensibility. With Kanye and Rosalia, it's a very different process with pop music, in that you're in the room and the music exists in different pieces, and you're kind of offering one piece of the larger painting that may or may not become a part of it, but the process of that leads to kind of new discoveries on everyone's end. So that's a much more piecemeal process. With So Percussion, it was much more similar to the pop music side, where everyone's in the room together and kind of offering different parts, and then you decide kind of what is it that it's exciting, and you make the piece really together. But with the more classical collaborations like Renee and Yo-Yo Ma and string quartets, it's a lot of me by myself in the room trying to figure out what is the gift that I want to offer that person.
Yeah. So this is a little bit more of a, I don't know, kind of a general question, but I think it's something that I really like to pick the brains of people who are doing such interesting and varied things, because I think, you see what's real. You see audiences that are excited about what you do, and I'm guessing that you've given at least a little bit of thought to this. But classical music for a very long time has been facing challenges about, things like the graying of the audience and that sort of thing. And we're trying really hard, or classical music is trying very hard to diversify who's in the audience, who's on the stage, who's on the program, who's in the boardroom. Do you have any thoughts about how that might be better accomplished or more successfully accomplished? Anything that's sort of come to mind about that?
I do think that, there are so many approaches to this. Always remembering that it is a love of the music itself and what the music does to us and how it moves us truly. I think remaining in touch with that feeling, and remembering that it's not necessarily about, famous names or doing something properly or doing the most proper, correct version of Mozart's 40th Symphony, but it's like, what is it about that piece that makes you cry? What is it about the Agnus Dei from Bach B minor Mass that makes you cry? And recognizing that same quality in lots of other kinds of music, and really sharing that. I think sharing that with each other, saying not just, we want to present something on stage with this kind of clothing and it's fancy and it's important, but music is messy. All these composers were messy people. And they, at one point, that music was really new. And remembering that there's still music today that's being made that's new, that is just as exciting. So I really think it's an embrace of other genres, not just on paper, but really fully. It's hard to describe. I feel like I'm going. My short answer is, we should all remember how to love music and how to share music and how to share that love of music with each other. And a lot of other things will fall into place if that is a real, authentic, genuine mission.
I like that. So I cannot ignore the fact that in your bio, you mentioned that your favorite color is yellow and your favorite smell is rosemary. And I'm so curious to know why you chose to include that information. I think it's actually kind of cool, but I'm very curious to know, what is it about the color yellow and the smell of rosemary that make them your favorites?
Oh, if I could put that into words, I would solve the world's... It's impossible. I mean, it's springtime now, so there's something about like certain color yellow where you see the forsythia that starts to bloom, and you can't look away, or the daffodils. I can't look away from the color yellow. I do think that it's maybe become blue recently is possibly my favorite color, but I don't know. It's something that's been pretty consistent. And rosemary, again, has that, I can't possibly describe it, but people now sometimes bring me sprigs of rosemary to concerts, which I love, because it's maybe it has a sense of home. It smells, there's something kind of deeply familiar, but also I don't know, it's just sort of warm about it. But I included that in my bio because it's I think we're all people, we're all humans. It's like I don't think it's as interesting to hear everybody I've worked with and where I studied in school, but I want to learn about people and who they are and what they like, and so it's, I guess, injecting a little bit more playfulness into the culture.
Good, I like that. I do agree with you very much too about the idea that people I think are that's what storytelling is about, right? It's about the people. It's not about the catalog numbers and music and like you say, the key signatures. So with that in mind, I'd like to ask you, what in the world, and it doesn't have to even be music, but what are you most passionate about right now? What makes you tick right now?
My first thought was gardening. It's like the time to plant. I was like, I just want I want to make things grow. Musically, I'm about to start writing a piece for So Percussion, but for themselves to do on their own without me. And I want to kind of dive into something that is a little bit more theatrical. That's not just the notes on the page, but really thinking about kind of what percussion music means right now. And also I'm passionate about making sure that we still have a country that's open to everyone.
Yes, yeah. Indeed. That's a tall order. And what are some of the things, I don't know, I guess on your wish list or whatever, what are some of the things that you're planning or hoping to do musically also or otherwise? What's the thing that's on the bucket list, if you will?
I'm excited about this. I have a band with my partner called Bring Down, and we call it a cinematic electronic pop music project. And there are things in that project that where I'm able to kind of try music in a different way from my sort of compositional hat, where I'm writing music down on a page for other people, but just much more like a band, like bands I used to see in my 20s. And it's a lot of work. I've learned being in a band is really hard. You have to carry your own gear and make sure everything plugs in and turns on just right, but I'm learning a lot. And I'm also really curious about, I have had this sort of 10-year dream to make something that is not quite theater, it's not quite opera, it's not quite a musical, but it uses some of those things. And it's a constant search for exactly what that is. Maybe in 10 years.
Getting back to your band though, where do you play? Where do you perform?
Well, we're based in Portland, Oregon. We recently did a concert in Utrecht in the Netherlands and in Milan, and we have some shows coming up in New York at Lincoln Center and BAM. So, yeah, a variety of places. It's funny, we have no problem kind of getting to play in these sort of more fancy classical venues, but we really want to just play the clubs and the festivals, but they don't quite understand what kind of music this is yet. But I play viola. I play viola in the band, which is fun. So I think people are a little surprised about that.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Why viola?
Well, I love the sound of it, and it's a kind of way of there's a lot of sort of synths in the band. There's a Moog bass synth, and we have some loop pedals and a little tape deck and sampled sounds. But the viola is sort of my musical home. I'm a violinist, but I love that rich sound. We have even one song that is a quote of Brahms' first violin sonata. So there's little bits here and there, little bits of classical sprinkled into this electronic pop music.
Very cool. And the band is Bring Down.
Ring Down, RINGDOWN. Mm. Yeah. We have an album coming out on May 9th.
Oh, and what's the album?
It's called Lady on the Bike, and it will be on None Such Records.
Oh, nice. So I have been speaking on Zoom with the award-winning singer, violinist, violist, composer, Caroline Shaw, about her amazing life and music. Thank you so much for making time to chat with me today.
Thank you so much. It is an honor to get to talk with you. I have listened to Sunday Baroque for years, and just a pleasure to speak with you.
Wow,
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot to me.